A thread by Soul War. Trump's first term as president was a victory for America, as the mainstream media frame every story in hate, division, and venom for all things traditionally American. President Trump has quietly been waging a war on behalf of the silent majority. He's been winning on several fronts. This thread will cover just one such front the mainstream media will never cover honestly: the border. What I call Trump's border war began from the minute he took office to about October of 2019, when Mexico activated thousands of Mexican soldiers to turn back caravans. The border was not only wide open when Trump became president, we were just coming off the Obama years where ICE and CBP had been deliberately hamstrung by what can only be called pro-illegal activists in Obama's administration. We were wide open to drugs and human traffickers. Warning, graphic. Under Obama, the cartels grew exponentially to the point they began to fight the Mexican government for control of entire regions and states, and then each other in a bloodbath so horrific the press had to show pictures to be believed. The new normal, we were told. Human trafficking is the most lucrative criminal enterprise on earth. With a wide open border under Obama, the cartels made billions of narco slavery dollars every year, and they spread those dollars around. As I've said, the border is a hotbed of corruption. This case is typical. I've often said the corruption and the malfeasance of the Democrats occurred over decades as stealth Marxists continued their slow march through our institutions. One result from that march is amorality. No borders on conduct. During Obama's presidency, Americans learned that we had no-go zones on US soil. I cannot emphasize this enough. At any time up until 1996, if Americans had learned that there were places too dangerous for Americans to go in America because of foreign criminals, the National Guard would have been dispatched to deal with it. From Bill Clinton's second term onward, put up a sign. Democrats love money. Cartels had billions and wanted influence on the US side. A match made in hell. Every time some super drug tunnel is found, people think, wow, they must be geniuses to build that on the sly. No. They paid off people on this side to look elsewhere as they conducted their operations. The cartels ruled the roost on both sides of the border until Trump came along and started ruining everything. AOC and the squad, Pelosi and Schumer, can wail about poor migrants all day long. I know why they're really wailing and demanding ICE be abolished and CBP put back in handcuffs. Trump is wrecking the human trafficking industry and drug smuggling trade top Democrats were making billions in dark money off of as we suffer an opioid crisis. How many were dying during the Obama years? Most Americans had never heard of fentanyl until President Trump was elected. Now, it seems to be everywhere. Oddly enough, although fentanyl now kills 20,000 Americans a year, Twitter still doesn't recognize the word. Weird, huh? And where does most of the fentanyl, you're never gonna acknowledge this word, Twitter, come to the States? The southern border. What's the origin of 90% of the drugs smuggled by the cartels? China. Trump's determination to have border security was never about oppressing migrants. Foreign actors were inundating us with dangerous narcotics to destroy as many American lives as possible as their partner, the cartels, grew more and more wealthy and powerful. And as their partners in DC profited mightily, putting their payoffs to good use. And then disaster befell them. The other lucrative trade, human trafficking, took an immediate hit as the first raids by the Department of Justice took place just 11 days after Trump was sworn in. 474 arrests in one 3-day raid sent shockwaves through Southern California. National media ignored it. From newspunch.com, hundreds arrested in huge Los Angeles pedo ring bust. Some of these had been under surveillance for almost a decade. Hang on, I gotta come in here. No, you're just here to run through. Bye. Anyway, back to this video. Some of these had been under surveillance for almost a decade, but had never been arrested. There's a reason Hillary melted down the night she lost. Their party favors are a footprint right back to them. Their DOJ would never act against them. Whoopsie. This is a link to show the staggering number of those arrested in Trump's war on pedophilia and human trafficking that the mainstream media studiously ignore. Many are being sentenced to multiple decades in federal prison where there is no parole. Lots of Hispanic names. When it comes to the Democrats trying to stuff as many illegals into America as possible, it's clear they not only want a servile slave class, they're determined to create an illegal alien voting bloc. Illegal traffic ramped up under Obama for obvious reasons. During the 8 years of Obama and the first 2 under Trump, our southern border was hit by what I call the pattering rain strategy. This was the cumulative effect of hundreds of small groups guided by coyotes entering the US from Texas to California every night. It was effective. After 2 years of Trump's leadership as president, it was beginning to fail, however. Trump unleashed and rebuilt up the CBP and ICE and deployed the US military along the border to assist. Illegal traffic waned. Unacceptable. So the forces of darkness spent money and operatives to fix it. So here came the caravans. From early 2018 to mid-2019, US border authorities were swamped with illegal hordes, overwhelming their capacities almost overnight. When they asked DC for help, Pelosi and Schumer sneered at them as AOC called for their abolition. Sound familiar? For months, as the CBP and ICE groaned under the strain of housing and caring for 15 to 20 times the number of bodies they were set for, Pelosi and Schumer mocked them, and Trump, what border crisis? They laughed. Only when the crisis became too large to ignore did they admit it, and then effortlessly pivoted to blaming Trump. Well, Trump was not idle. He had fought for and got the funding for his border wall. A wall I've pointed out is only part of why illegal traffic has plummeted. Drones, powerful cameras, and dogs and interdiction patrols. And here's the most effective element of Trump's new border security: the Mexican military. Once they began an active role in turning back the caravans, the mainstream media dropped their border coverage like a hot potato because Trump had won. When was the last border story in the mainstream media? Trump won his border war with the left despite their best efforts, and just recently signed an executive order that will prohibit illegals from being counted in the US Census. This means Democrats will lose seats in several states like California. These weasels jammed their cities full of aliens, illegals they issued driver's license to, as they push relentlessly for another Reagan-era amnesty, or even to make it legal for illegals to vote in US elections. With one stroke of his pen, Trump just removed their carefully created illegal alien voting bloc. As the improved E-Verify is implemented in 2021, I predict Trump will give illegals a grace period to get legal. Those who either can't or won't get legal status will have their benefits cut. Imagine California trying to feed and house them without federal help. Impossible. Watch. In 2021, the new E-Verify will go into effect, and although I suspect Trump will grant them a grace period, at some point, those who either can't or refuse to get legal will have their welfare benefits cut off. Sorry for the delay. Lost internet. you will see the flood of illegals leaving the US during Trump's second term, as these blue states that attracted those illegals for political clout will abandon them as the federal treasury snaps shut on welfare to illegals. One last point. The cartels are now stealing oil to bolster their waning profits. MS-13 is shattered nationwide with thousands deported, their leaders in federal prison for long stretches. Why did Trump go after MS-13 so hard? Because they were imported by Democrats. I'm not even kidding. Look it up. They were bused to every major US city by US immigration and naturalization on your dime. Why did the Dems do this for their cartel buddies? Simple. Their smuggling networks are comprised of vital members that they need to stay there. Some of those networks are family members, but the bloodshed and chaos in Mexico was growing unmanageable, and they were beginning to need muscle and assassins inside the US to maintain order. They don't want to sacrifice members of their own network and send their best killers, so MS-13 were sent to be their throwaway assassins and muscle in the States. MS-13 have no fear of US laws or prison. A supermax in the US is actually preferable to life on the street in Central America for these gang members. This is why Trump roared, "Get them out," at rallies. He knew who let them in. They know he's going to stop 95% of the drugs and slaves coming in from the southern border. It's why they're trying, at this very moment, to defund police and turn all their sanctuary cities into ungovernable hell zones. To blame him. Illegal aliens make up 7% of the US population. 42% of people sentenced to federal prison in 2018 were illegals. In 2019, 41,363 of those sentenced were citizens. 33,668 were illegals, about the same. Trump's border security coupled with E-Verify are an imperative for our future. As the federal purse strings are slowly but firmly closed, I predict the percentage of illegals in the US will dwindle to about 2%. This will cut crime in the US by almost 50% overnight. Using federal crimes as an indicator, how many local and state crimes by illegals will also plummet. Please retweet, especially the tweet about federal sentencing. The mainstream media will never tell the American people that we've been suffering due to open borders for decades. And they certainly won't admit President Trump is ending this nightmare for us, another triumph in the soul war. To support Brent Cates' works, donate any amount here, paypal.me/Brent Cates. Thank you for listening.